The CenterPoint receipt screen records activity that increases a cash account or decreases a line of credit account. In this session, we will go through the fields on a receipt screen and enter a cash sale. Under your Processes menu, go to Sales and then Receipts. Your receipt screen is going to be a combination of selecting different items from the different setup lists that you've previously added to. And it begins with the company. The company is filled in because there is only one company in this particular sample data. If you have more than one company, then you can either hit F4 in this field and it would bring up a lookup list, or you can click the magnifying glass, which is the lookup icon, and select from the list, or you'll be able to enter a couple of characters and do a filter match, which we'll try when we get to the bank account. We're going to hit our tab key that goes from field to field, and we're at the bank account. So in the bank field, again, we could click the lookup button and see all of our available bank accounts that we have here. Or I know that I want my cash account, so I'm going to just type in a couple of characters, and it found my cash account. Whenever you're in a field that is a lookup list, there are always a lot of right-click menu options there to help you. For example, if I needed to make a new account, I could make a new account here. Or I could edit this particular account, and it would bring up the detail of that account in case I needed to change the name or something like that. I can also set it as default. So if I typically use cash and bank checking on my receipts, then after selecting that in the field, I can right-click and choose Set as Default. That will fill in that field for me the next time I open up the receipt screen, so it's just one less field that I have to fill in. We're going to go on and hit our tab key to the next field, which is Bank Deposit. Bank Deposit is used if you are doing deposit slips and you're taking multiple receipts to the bank at one time, and you want a list of those different receipts to make that deposit. Bank deposit is also used when in the bank reconciliation. On the bank statement, you're going to see a total of a deposit that you took to the bank, and by doing the bank deposit, it will show you that total to reconcile to when you're doing the bank reconciliation. What you can do in the receipt screen is leave bank deposit empty, and then later, after you have all the receipts and you're ready to go to the bank, you can go to Processes, Banking, and Bank Deposit, and then do the bank deposit from there. You don't have to have it filled in when you're doing the receipt, but you can. If you right-click here, you could do a new bank deposit, create a bank deposit, and then use that same deposit selection on all the receipts that are going to the bank at the same time. On the Receive From will represent the customer that this particular revenue is coming from. So we're going to do a receipt from Tyler. We get some rent from him, and we just put that in as a cash revenue each month. So on Tyler, I typed in a couple of characters of Tyler, and it found that on the list. There are different right-click options here from the name field that you don't have from the bank or the company up at the top. Again, I could make a new name here. If this was a name that I hadn't used before, I can click New and do a new one. Or I could also do New from the lookup list, and there is a new button there. If this happened to be a name that I know I'm not going to probably use in the future, you can do New One-Time Use. That brings up a modified version of the name detail with just the name and address information. And when you save this, it will automatically become inactive. We're going to click Cancel there and click OK. Another thing we can do from the name field is review transactions. So if I wanted to see all the transactions I previously entered to this name, click Review Transactions, brings up a search screen, and lists all the transactions that I currently have done with Tyler in the date span. So I could see if I have made sure and entered all the previous entries here for him. And I can edit any one of these transactions here also, just like in Search. Another right-click option is setting the how you want this to behave when you select that name. Leave transaction empty will leave the grid at the bottom empty, so I just put it in manually. Recall will recall the last transaction automatically, and when you pick the name, it would fill it out based on the last transaction. And load default reoccurring is if I had set a reoccurring transaction on this particular name. We're gonna, and then it would bring in the reoccurring and load that transaction. We're gonna leave it empty at this point, and then we'll get to using a recall and a recurring. Okay, I'm gonna tab to the next field, and that will be address. If I want to change the address for this particular one, because I'm going to print a receipt perhaps, and I want a different address on it, I could select a different address if there were one on here. The receipt invoice number is incrementing based on my sequence set for that. And my sequences are stored under setup and then general and then numbering sequences. So it's just incrementing that. The date, if I want to change the day and it's in the same month, I can just type in a number and it would go to that day. Or if it were a different month, then I could do the month and the day and it would fill out the whole date with the current year. Or I can click my calendar button and select it from my calendar. On the amount, you can either leave it blank and have it fill in for you with the just amount at the bottom, or I can start with an amount if I want to. So we know that it is $325, and it fills then that amount in my first line in my grid, waiting for me to finish out that entry with the account later. The payment type is if I want to track the different kinds of payments of cash, check, credit card. And this will also be a help when you're doing your bank deposit, because you can filter the different types of payment if you're doing a deposit at that point. The check reference number, if you want to track whatever their check number is, and then it went to account. Over at the top on apply to open invoices, if this particular name had an open invoices, apply to open invoices would have been highlighted in yellow. For example, if I choose this number, there is an open invoice for Frank, and then we apply to open invoices. And then if we're receiving from those open invoices, we would click that button and then go ahead and make our selections of receiving that open invoice. Let's go back to Tyler. And now we're going to go to account. And the account is where we're indicating what this revenue is for. And again, we could do our lookup here and look at all of our accounts, or if we needed to make a new account, we could click new, or if we a new fixed asset, if we were selling or doing something with a fixed asset. But we're just going to be doing this for rental income, which we have already. So I'm going to type in rental income and select that particular account. And we had, it's no longer filling in our amount here because we had changed names up there, and that's what disrupted that, but that was $325. On our grid in our transaction entry, we can change the fields that we are seeing here on the front screen. We can remove some or we can add some. If you right click on the blue row and select add or remove columns, we see all of the different columns that we could choose to display. And if we perhaps wanted to use Profit Center quite a bit and we want that on the front screen, we could display that. And that just eliminates having to go to detail. If you click detail, that will always show all the fields that are available on the particular template that you're using at the top. And the template could be changed here also if we needed to. So we're going to go ahead and click OK and come back to the front screen. And we could put in our notation here if we want. And then go ahead and we would be ready to save that. Let's say that we wanted to use our recall. So we're going to clear this, go back to Tyler. And if we wanted to do recall instead, because we do the same thing mostly, then we just click recall. That fills in the last transaction that we did with Tyler. If we want to use it as a reoccurring, we could do that too. We have it filled out at this point, so we could click reoccurring. make this a reoccurring for Tyler rent, let's call it. We have to give it a description. And it's always the same amount, so we could choose fixed amount, so it fills in that too. And then go ahead and save it. And what that would do is then also when we're choosing Tyler, it automatically filled that in for us. And all we would have to do is click adjust amount and we would be ready to go. Down at the bottom of the screen, you can also always click this plus sign to show which accounts are going to be recorded when this transaction posts. So it is the cash and bank that is going to get debited and the rental income is going to be credited. And then we could go on and do, if this were for multiple things for this particular receipt, then we could go on to the next account and put in the details for that information. At the bottom are our icons. The print icon is currently at an X, meaning it's not printing a receipt. If we were wanting to print a receipt, we could check that we want to print, pick the printer and the type of invoice receipt, click OK, and now that shows a green check mark indicating it will print a receipt. If we were emailing, we could select that. Currently, there's no email set. And if we wanted to scan a document and attach it to this transaction, this would tell it to go scan. And the paperclip allows us to attach a document that's currently on the computer that we could browse to and attach to this transaction. Memo lines would actually print on the receipt if we had information there that we wanted to print on there. And the adjust amount will adjust if we have amounts in our grid that don't agree with the amount that we had at the top. At the bottom, save is going to save the transaction, and in this case it's going to post it because we have no batch. Clear will clear all of the entries so we can start over. Recall, we went through with recalling a transaction and assigning a reoccurring. And then we have some different options. Review transactions will bring up the last 10 entries we did with that bank account and company. Custom field comments is if you have some custom fields created and you want to put some data in there for the custom field comments. Recall, you have a choice between recalling by company or recalling by company bank, and that will toggle between the two. So when you use recall, if you only wanted to recall entries that are specific to a combination of the company and bank account you have selected, that's what that would do. And set tab stops allows you to uncheck some buttons. So if you're going through the screen and you don't want to stop at a field, you can uncheck those, and then that would eliminate stopping at that field and make the transaction entry a little shorter, just a little shortcut. And refresh if you made some changes and you just want to refresh the screen. Those are the different options when doing your receipt screen. And we're going to go ahead and click save, and that will post this transaction.